I grew up in northern Iowa, just a few miles from the Minnesota border. Forest City is my hometown in Winnebago County. And from Forest City, I moved on to Iowa State University, and I was there in the late 1950s. In fact, I was graduated from the final class to graduate from Iowa State College. So it was ISC when we sang the fight song and not ISU. But that was during the era of the Cold War. In college, my journalism career there was at WOI and KASI, and a lot of experience there. But my freshman quarter, I was approached, I was given the opportunity, my journalism advisor, to apply for a job at WOI radio. I did, and I found myself doing the noon breaks, station ID, weather, and things like that on WOI radio, which was a good experience. And by my senior year, I was delivering the newscasts in the morning on WOI. In fact, my graduation morning, I gave the 7 o'clock newscast on WOI, went home and got my cap and gown, and went over to the graduation ceremonies. Probably about 6 or 7 years ago, I was invited by Wartburg College to join the advisory committee to the president, and I accepted the invitation, and mainly because I had seen the archives in the past, because my mentor had been Grant Price. Grant had invited me up several times because we were good friends, and had shown me what he had started there in the archives. So when I got the invitation from the president of Wartburg to join an advisory committee that would advise him, the president, on the archives, I jumped at the chance, because it was a chance to further what Grant Price, my good friend, had begun. Grant realized that we were making history, that we were not making history, we were recording history. But how do you move on from that step of a nightly newscast into making that available for historians and future television programs that want to reference what happened maybe 10, 15, even 30 years ago? Grant realized that it was more than just looking back a week or two, that we had history, and the history of Iowa, and we needed the place to store it. And he knew that many of these files were being hauled out to the landfill because stations don't have unlimited space. So yes, he was a visionary in being able to develop the means, at least, to collect this material before it was lost forever, as a lot of it has been. You know, a daily newscast disappears after it's been aired. And yes, that film or videotape goes up in a file, but stations don't have room to keep all of that. That's why I think the Iowa archives are so important. It's the alternative to the landfill. Either that Iowa history in videotape and film goes into the landfill, because stations don't have any place to store that. They'll store a little bit of it, maybe, and but not in the way that it needs to be cataloged, indexed, and stored. And that's what the Iowa Broadcast News Archives can do. I just know that there are years of newscasts that are stored there and are ready to be preserved, because, as you suggest, they won't stay in their current form forever, because in the early days we were shooting what we called sound on film. It was magnetic strip alongside the 16mm film. And that sound on film, that magnetic strip, will lose, if it hasn't already, the crisp sound quality that was on that film originally. The videotapes, then that evolved in the early 1970s when we converted to videotape rather than 16mm film. That also is deteriorating and won't last forever. So we're working against a ticking I wouldn't say time bomb, but it's a ticking clock that is deteriorating this material if we don't get to it fast. Well, Wartburg College is a leader because Grant Price transmitted the vision and Wartburg College bought into it, to Wartburg College's great credit. Being able to communicate that vision to those who would help preserve and would underwrite the costs of preserving this, that's the mission right now that the Iowa Broadcast News Archives Board of Directors is undertaking, along with Wartburg College librarian and archivists. That's what we need to be able to communicate clearly to those who also would see a value in preserving this history. Because Iowa is alone, and Wartburg College is really a bastion, if you will, in preserving this history. I don't think anyone around, other than the networks themselves, PBS, NBC, CBS, ABC, the networks themselves, I don't think anybody else is preserving, has taken a lead in preserving this history. I think for the most part it's being disposed of. Well, I would say that the average person probably doesn't know if they should care or not because they don't know about it. But as an Iowan, we have a unique opportunity to preserve this history, and that should matter to the person in Shenandoah or Forest City or West Union, Dubuque, whatever. Because as Iowans, we have a proud history. We have gone through, as I said, the transformation of rural America, which was just a real upheaval of rural America, and it took place here in Iowa. We had the civil rights upheaval, and we were a part of that here. We've had presidential candidates parading through Iowa now for decades because we've had the first in the nation caucuses. We are a leader in the nation. Why is this important to the person at Forest City? Because the person in Forest City or Shenandoah or Des Moines, as an Iowan, has a pride in that past history. That's part of our legacy as a state. That's part of, as an Iowan, part of my legacy in who I am as an Iowan, who we are as a state. That's why it should matter. The finish line is always moving because time evolves and more newscasts are stored and need to be preserved. But we need to make a start, and whatever we do, whatever little inching along we do, is progress. And that's what we need to do. We need to start that plan, that organization, and further what's already been done. Much essential work has already been done in having the vision to preserve these things and to rescue them from going to the landfill. But, so the inertia is there. Now we need to take that second step, and whatever that second step is, even if it's a baby step, it's progress. Well, get involved. Know what we have in this treasure, first of all. A treasure that is really in its raw form right now. Yes, they are finished newscasts, but they, for historical purposes, need to be preserved so that we can go back and know what we have and access them quickly so that we can use that as a context for stories that we are developing today. Too many journalists today, I believe, and it's no fault of new journalists, but they haven't lived through the era that brought us to where we are today. If we can provide that context, we will have journalists who are more broadly acquainted with why things happen and how things happened, so that this is what's causing what's happening today, and I can better interpret that and provide it to my listeners and viewers.